nachma, lekutei, lesson 18. The Rebbe's own words of a Yonason told, I was once traveling by ship, and I saw this chest in which precious stones and pearls were studded, and bezH fish were circling it. An Amorite swimmer went into the water to fetch it, and it started to move and tried to bite off his leg. He shot a spray of vinegar in its way, and it started to move and tried to bite off his leg. He shot a spray of vinegar its way, and it disappeared. A baskel came out and said, what are you doing with the chest of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa's wife? It is going to be used to hold holiest, turquoise like dye for the tziddikim, for the tziddikim in the future world. Rabbi Yonason told, I was once traveling by ship, and I saw this chest. Number one, no, everything has a purpose, tachlis, and every purpose also has a purpose, higher upon higher. For instance, the purpose of building a house is so that one has a place to rest, and the purpose of rest is so that one has strength to serve God, and the purpose of serving God, etc. Now the purpose of any given phenomenon is connected with thought and the intellect more closely than the phenomenon itself. Now the purpose of any phenomenon is connected with thought and the intellect more closely than the phenomenon itself, for the end act was the first thing in thought, hence the end goal and the purpose were the first thing in thought and close to it, and the final product evolved from the purpose. For instance, when one considers building a house, the house is certainly not built in a moment. Wood must be prepared, and each piece only carved into shape as needed. Only then can the house be built, hence completing the house, which is the end goal and purpose, was the first thing in mind, meaning that the purpose is closer to thought than the beginning of the project. Number two, the purpose of the entire creation is the spiritual fulfillment of the future world, Shashua. But it is impossible to bring this purpose close to people's thoughts, as the verse says about this purpose. No eye ever saw the true tzaddikim, nanach, nachman, meuman, however are able to grasp this purpose of the future world. But each and every Jew, according to his root within the soul of the tzaddik, nanach, nachman, meuman, receives this purpose from the tzaddik, nanach, nachman, meuman, according to the degree that one dissolves one's anger with compassion. That is, when one begins to get angry, one does not express this anger with any violent act, but on the contrary, ameliorates the anger with compassion, as in the midst of anger, remember compassion. This creates a crown for the humble. This creates a crown for the humble who flee from honor and positions of power. This creates a crown for the humble who flee from honor and positions of power and make themselves redundant. But when they are crowned with a crown of compassion, as in who crowns you kindness and compassion, who crowns you kindness and compassion, they are then forced to accept honor and positions of power. They are then forced to accept honor and positions of power. This is alluded to again. A crown of glory for the Shar, remnant of his people, upon which our sages comment, for those who make themselves shirayim, redundant, leftovers. Now, the reason why the tzaddik, nachman, nachman, flees from positions of power and honor, does not want to be a leader of people, is because of the concealment of God's countenance, which is caused by a lack of faith among the Jewish people. The more the more God's countenance is concealed, and when he does not want, the more God's countenance is concealed, and he does not want to guide them. This concealment is an aspect of God's anger. This concealment is an aspect of God's anger and wrath regarding idolatry, as we are taught. As long as there is idolatry in the world, there is wrath in the world. But even when there is no longer idolatry in the world, if faith is not perfect, there is still wrath and concealment in proportion to the lack of faith. But since God's anger is only for a moment, as the verse says, for a moment in his wrath, therefore it is not sensed, unless there is idolatry in the world. If there is no idolatry, a lack of faith alone will certainly not cause a split yet seconds, bit of wrath to be sensed, and the concealment of God's countenance will not be evident. But when the ripples of this wrath reach the tzaddikim, nanach, nachman, meuman, they conceal their own faces from the world and do not want to guide it. And since this wrath is only for a split second, they do not attribute their hiding themselves to the divine wrath, but attribute it to their own insignificance, making themselves redundant, saying that they are not worthy to lead the world. The truth is that they too are unaware of and do not sense the divine wrath, since it is so momentary. But the truth is that they too are unaware. But the truth is that they... But the truth is that they too. Nachman. But the truth is that they too are unaware of and do not sense the divine wrath, since it is so momentary. This explains why after Moses humbled himself from going to Egypt and becoming a leader, saying, "Who am I to go to Pharaoh?" the verse says God became angry with Moses. That is, God's anger coming down was the reason why Moses humbled himself and did not want to become the leader, but by ameliorating the anger and wrath with compassion, the anger with the tzaddikim, nanach, nachman, within the tzaddikim, the anger within the tzaddikim, nach, nachma, meuman, is also ameliorated by compassion. They are then overwhelmed with compassion, and they have compassion on the world and agree to lead it, accepting leadership positions upon themselves. Nanach, nachman, meuman, leading the world with this compassion, as in he who has compassion on them will lead them. Hence this compassion is their crown, which crowns them with the divine attribute of kingship and leadership. This is alluded to in the argaz chest, in which were studded precious stones, and argaz represents roig's anger, and precious stones are an aspect of a crown of compassion. bezH, fish were circling it, alludes to faith as we are taught. Instead of the thorn bush will sprout a brosh, a cypress tree, which refers to Mordechai, who was called a Jew for his denying idolatry, as we are tavuvat. Anyone renouncing idolatry is called a Jew. Nanach, nachma, meuman. Number 3. Sometimes a person may think that he has compassion on the world and wants to lead it. But the truth is that he is just pursuing the glory, attributing his pursuit to compassion, while he is in fact attributing his pursuit to compassion, while he is in fact far from having this compassion, while he is in fact far from having this compassion. While he is in fact far from having this compassion. This is because as long as one lacks absolutely perfect faith, one should certainly not accept any positions of kingship or leadership. And even if one believes in God, if one also believes in something that is considered the ways of the Amorites, Gentiles, one should certainly not accept any leadership. This is because the essence of leadership is compassion, and the essence of compassion is the renunciation of idolatry, including the slightest hint of idolatry. Even one Oh, that's even one. That's even one who divines. That's even one who divines. That's that's even one. The Vava's even one who divines. When some beast crosses his path, lacks perfect compassion. Tzvi of Siko, Tzvi is a deer. There's even one who divines when some beast crosses his path, lacks perfect compassion. Therefore, even someone with great faith should not accept leadership until one has done a thorough introspection to assure that one does not have faith in anything one should not believe in, such as those things considered the ways of the Amorites, Gentiles. Rather, one should have perfect faith in one's God. Rather, one should have perfect faith in one's God. Then the compassion is real, and such a person deserves to lead. Then the compassion is real, and such a person deserves to lead. Then the compassion is real. Then the compassion is real. Then the compassion is real, and such a person deserves to lead. Anyone lacking perfect faith, though, who thinks that he has compassion on the world and wants to lead it, is in the category of the kingship will turn into heresy. For even a bit of heresy blemish is the kingship, a representation of leadership, transforming it into heresy. Just as this person turns the kingship over to himself, who is a bit of a heretic, who is a small, who is a bit of a heretic. Number 4, but no. Faith always holds on tightly. Faith always holds on tightly to kingship and leadership, so that no one unworthy of it seizes it. And all the essence of kingship is rooted in wisdom, in order to know how to lead and rule. Therefore, every king has wise men and counselors, for this is how his reign will be established and his country will endure. This is alluded to in when leaders gather together. Meaning that by way of the leaders who represent the mind and wisdom, the concept of Malchus kingdom will be established, and by way of loving the wise, the kingdom will be established. But when antipathy for the wise arises in the king's heart, he can be sure that he will be cast down by heaven from his kingship. Hate for the wise arises in the king's heart, he can be sure that he will be cast down by heaven from his kingship. For the world cannot exist without wisdom, as in, a king will establish the earth with judgment, and judgment is an aspect of the wise. As in, if you abhor my judgments, which the sages understand to be referring to loathing the wise. Thus, when someone who lacks perfect faith, because of his faith in the ways of the Amorites, Gentiles, tries to seize power and leadership of which he is not worthy, the faith surrounding leadership that protects it from the undeserving from accessing it will cast this person into hatred of the wise, so that his reign and leadership will not be enduring, and indeed it will not, since the essence of kingship is dependent upon judgment. As said, however, if this person who has seized power becomes so deeply entrenched in heresy that he severs faith from leadership, then his kingship may endure, for there is then nothing. If this person who sees power becomes so deeply entrenched in heresy that he severs faith from leadership, then his kingship may endure, for there is then nothing to cast him into hatred of the wise, for faith is now severed from kingship. This is alluded to, for faith is now severed from kingship. This is alluded to, for faith is now severed from kingship. This is alluded to in an Amorite. This is alluded to in an Amorite. A swimmer went into the water to fetch it, and he tried to bite off his atmo leg. An Amorite is one who lacks perfect faith. Atmo alludes to oitem, alludes to Alutsu oitain, one who closes his ear from hearing bloodshed, which refers to one who will not listen to the disgracing of Talmudic scholars. Thus, bezH, faith wants to cast him into antipathy for the wise. I hate for the wise. He shot a spray of vinegar in its way, and it dispersed. And it disappeared. Vinegar represents the surging of heresy, as in when my heart turns sour, which causes faith to disappear. Number 5, and the truth is, though Gentile kings rule over us, their kingship has absolutely no relationship to the kingship of Israel. And they have no access to it. Anyone who tries to access it will lose even what he has. That is, he will forfeit his reign over the Gentiles as well. The faith that surrounds our kingship will cast down their wise, upon whom their kingship is dependent. This is alluded to in the verse regarding the fall of Egypt. The officers of Zon, I became fools, for their kingdom fell because the wise men lost their wisdom. This is also with Hanan, Mishael, and Azariah. Told Nebuchadnezzar, you are our king for taxes, but as far as guiding us in service and faith, you and a dog are equal. That is, his dominion was powerless over the kingship of Israel, which is connected to our faith, for our faith surrounds the kingship and guards it from being seized by the undeserving, casting its pursuers into hatred of the wise. Only when heresy has overpowered and torn down faith, only when heresy has overpowered and torn down faith can they access our kingship. As in, he shot a spray of vinegar its way and it disappeared. Number 6, but no, heaven will not allow him to seize it. This is the meaning of a bas kol came out and said, what are you doing with the chest of Rebbe Chanina ben Dosa's wife? It is going to be used to hold holiest for the tzaddikim in the future world, that is by way of the perfection of the letters of spoken words of faith. Represented by Rebbe Chanina ben Dosa's wife, Rebbe Chanina ben Dosa represents faith as in my child Chanina makes do with a kav, small measure of carob fruit. A kav of carob fruit represents faith because the numerical value of kav is equivalent to that of emunah. Faith. I both 102. The carob fruit is in the category of brosh, cedar trees, which is represented by bezH. Has said Aishis wife alludes to letters as in its acronym Avonim Shleimois Tivne. Avonim Shleimois Tivne Aishis. You shall build with perfect stones, for stones are letters, as we are taught. 3 stones build 6 houses, words. Now letters are perfected by way of faith, as in, then I will transform for the nations a clear tongue, so that they all call out in God's name, meaning that by way of faith, represented by calling out in God's name, then I will transform for the nations a clear tongue, representing the perfection of faith. Now the perfection of letters represents the purpose of all creatures, for all worlds were created by way of letters. The perfection of the letters is represented by the letter Yud, which represents the future world, which was created with the letter Yud. The Yud is the final drop of ink that completes the form of each letter. If this final drop that completes the form of the letter would be missing, the letter certainly lacks perfection and its proper form. Now the letters are connected with kingship and leadership, as in Malchus Peh, the kingship is the mouth. For leadership is essentially through speech, since it is impossible to lead and instruct other than through speech, hence through the perfection of the letters of faith in the Malchus, the tzaddikim nanach, nachman, meuman, know the purpose of the future world, for they are the world's leaders, as in a tzaddik rules, who hold firmly to the Malchus, by a way of which they hold firmly to the perfected letters in the Malchus, by way of which they hold firmly to the purpose, which is the perfection of the letters represented by the Yud, which represents the future world. This is represented by the techeles, which alludes to the tachlis purpose that is revealed within the chest. The leadership and kingship, by way of Aishis, the wife of Rebbe Chanina ben Dosa, as in Avonim Shleimois Tehivne, build it with perfect stones, but for the tzaddikim, nanach, nachman, in the future world, perceive the purpose, which is the future world. This is allotted to know him in all your ways, meaning that one should be able to perceive the purpose in all phenomena. This is because everything was created with letters, and each letter has perfection, which is the final drop of ink, which is the yud, which represents the future world, which is the purpose that completes the form of the letter. Now, number 7, now the tachlis is represented by techeles, since techeles, turquoise-like, is a mixture of black and white, in that it is on the color spectrum between black and white. When black and white are brought together, as happens in writing, which is black ink on white paper, the underside of the letter touching and closest to the paper, which is white, there at that point of closest touching, the borders between black and white become blurry, and the colors mix. An aspect of tchelis, now the underside of the letter is the end purpose, for when the scribe writes by holding the quill or pen over the paper, the ink is certainly at some small distance. For when the scribe writes by holding the quill or pen over the paper, the ink is certainly at some when the scribe writes by holding quill or pen over the paper, the ink is certainly at some small distance from the paper. Then the scribe presses the pen. When the scribe presses the pen and ink into the paper, and the black ink is absorbed into the depth of the paper. Then the scribe presses the pen and ink into the paper, and the black ink is absorbed into the depth of the paper. This intimate intermingling. This intimate intermingling of black and white is the end purpose of the writing, and that the paper and the ink are intermingled at that point, an aspect of the chelis. The turquoise for the tzitz is indeed the purpose. Tachlis, which is the last thing done, is the first thing in thought and close to the initial thought and close to the initial thought. In my humble opinion, this is because the end act is represented by blackness, while the initial thought is represented by the supernal whiteness, as is known in the Kabbalah. Hence, the end act, which is the purpose, is the first thing in thought, and close to the initial thought, which is an aspect of tcheles, which is the union of black and white. Understand this. Number 8, this is exactly why a baskol came out. A baskol, an echo, represents the purpose of all things. That is, it inverts everything from beginning to end. Which is the purpose, as in who is wise, one who foresees developments, which is the end purpose. A baskol is what we hear when someone shouts out in the forest or some other place. It sounds as if someone else is shouting out the same thing. When someone says something, we hear it exactly as he spoke it. So if we hear the baskol as it was originally spoken, it must have inverted the speech. So as if we hear the baskol as it was originally spoken, it must have inverted the speech from beginning to end, with the end of the speech coming closer to itself. For instance, when someone articulates the word baruch, the letter bezH is certainly the first one spoken and travels away from the speaker. Then one articulates the letter resh of baruch, making the resh closer to the speaker than the bezH. And similarly, when one articulates the last letter kaf, it is closer to the speaker than the resh. But what the bezH closer, but the baskol takes the word baruch and inverts it from beginning to end, making the bezH closer to the speaker than the resh, and the resh then the chaf. Hence the chaf, the end and purpose of the word, which was initially the most distant from the baskol, is now the closest to it. This is what we hear. The baskol is articulating the word baruch, first the bezH, then the resh, then the chaf. Thus the chaf, the purpose, which was originally the furthest from the baskol, is now the closest to it. The baskol inverted the word. This is why a baskol came out. Only a baskol could reveal this. What are you doing with the chest of Rabbi Chanina ben Dosa's wife? It is going to be used to hold chelis for the tzaddikim in the future world. Till here are the Rebbe's own words. Nach, nachman, meuman, the remaining Talmudic tales by Rabbi Hida, Hindu and others, and similar tales brought there in Baba Basra after those of Rabbi Baba Chana, such as those of Hina bar Nasan and the story of Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, are expanded upon in part 2, lessons number 3 through 5. quench your spiritual thirst by studying them. Nanach, nachman, meuman, until here, His mercy helped us to finish the words of the one who spoke. Which hidden them, the hiddens of the king, all of the Talmudic sages, and now the later sages of the Talmud, the earlier Talmudic sages, the later Talmudic sages. Now let us listen to the words that came out in beauty. Oh, they're beautiful on them, they're pleasant on them, they're nice on them to say them in the face and the presence of the king. In wisdom, He will reveal to you a little to let known the greatness of the Creator that are stored away, high things stored away that are covered up and treasured away in the book of Tzniisa, of modesty, of the Zohar, Osaya v'Timayo, the letters and the wonders, the Abarimuno, Elekushmayo, Legalis Luni 18 Deraiso, that has made with us the God of the heaven to reveal to us the advice of the Torah, Derech Nifla v'Noiro, Hashuv v'Chol Nefesh, Lizkos Lizkurei v'Ayudem l'Divru Koilo, L'Meva Hadleiri Isu, in a wondrous way and an awesome that is equal to all souls, to be privileged to them, to get close through them, through the hands of them, to He who created everything, to do His will. Blessed is His name above all of the blessings and the songs. Lesson number 19, a prayer of Chabukuk, the prayer of the prophet for having erred. Until there was a scale, divine providence did not interact directly, literally, face to face. People wonder, number one, why does one need to travel to the tzaddik to hear him directly? Meuman. Isn't it enough to study ethics from books? However, there's a great benefit in traveling to the tzaddik, nachman, but there's a great difference between one who hears directly from the true tzaddik and one who hears from someone quoting him, nachman, and all the more so one who hears from someone who heard from someone word, each time getting further and further from the mouth of the tzaddik. And the difference between one who hears directly from the tzaddik and one who studies from a book is even greater. Nanach, nachman, meuman. One must refine one's countenance so that all others will be able to see their own faces in one's as if in a mirror, such that others will immediately regret their actions simply by looking into one's face. Even without one's giving any rebuke, simply by looking into one's face, others will see themselves as in a mirror. How their faces are sunken in darkness. How their faces are sunken in darkness.